Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're looking at the second structure deck which has been released for Yu-Gi-Oh Rush Duels. Joint Tech Rex is an Earth attribute machine type level 7 with 2500 attack and 1500 defense. The requirement: during the turn you normal summon this card, shuffle 3 monsters from your graveyard into the deck. The effect is to destroy 1 card in your opponent's spell and trap zone. This is a decent way of getting rid of some of your opponent's back row cards, but it can only be activated on the turn that it's normal summoned, and it does require you to get rid of 3 monsters from the graveyard back into the deck. That's not too difficult considering that it needs 2 tributes to bring this card out, but it's not an impressive effect as this is supposed to be the boss monster. Steel Mech Lord Mirror Innovator is a light attribute machine type level 7 with 2400 attack and 1800 defense. It has no requirements and the effect is to choose up to 3 monsters in your graveyard with the same type as this card. This card gains attack equal to the total levels of those monsters times 100 until the end of this turn. Then shuffle those monsters into the deck. If you shuffled exactly 1 monster by this effect, this card inflicts piercing battle damage. If the attack of the attacking monster exceeds the defense of the attack target, inflict the difference if it attacks a defense position monster this turn. Potentially what this card does is if you get 3 monsters with the same type, then you increase this card by the levels times 100. So if you've got 3 monsters all at level 8, that's an extra 2400 attack points. That will be boosted onto this. So that will actually double this card's attack points very decently. But you do have a trade-off. You can either do that to make it a beat stick and get over your opponent's monsters, or you can choose to shuffle 1 card back and apply the smaller boost but with the piercing effect, which may be more useful if, for example, your opponent is playing a defensive deck, because at the end of the turn this card's attack points go back to where they began at, 2400. Drilling Mandrill is an Earth attribute machine type level 7 with 1700 attack and 2000 defense. The requirement: during your main phase that you normal special summon this card, the effect is to change face down defense position monsters on your opponent's field face up attack position, up to the number of face up machine type monsters on your field. The original attack of the monsters changed to face up attack position by this effect becomes 0 until the end of this turn. Potentially with this card, if you've got multiple machine type monsters on the field, this will enable you to wipe out all of your opponent's attack points, and this would allow you to almost attack directly with those monsters. The concerns are it does require a lot of investment to bring this card out. It requires 2 tributes. To bring out a further 2 monsters to trigger the maximum of this effect means that's a total of 4 monsters, and you do rely on your opponent having as many monsters on their field as possible. So if they've got another 3, that's a reliance on having 7 monsters in the round, which can be difficult to maximize off of. The other thing you've got to consider is that for a level 7 it's only 1700 attack points. It's very meager, and actually there are some level 5 and 6 monsters that can get over this, and there are only 1 tribute requirements. The other problem is this can only be activated on the main phase of the turn that this card is summoned. So if you miss the opportunity, or your opponent stops you from going into, for example, your battle phase, then you might find yourself in a position where you've wasted this effect and any resources involved in summoning this card. Bascule the Moving Fortress is an Earth attribute machine type level 7 with 0 attack and 2500 defense. The requirement: during the turn you normal summon this card, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. The effect is to change this card's battle position. Attack position becomes face up defense position, defense position becomes face up attack position, then special summon 1 Earth attribute normal monster from your graveyard face up to your field. This is an okay effect because you just require sending the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. If they've got graveyard based effects, you can then trigger those off, or it can help you set up for further plays in the future. By having this summoned in attack position, to use its effect and switching it to defense position is more ideal than vice versa, because it has 2500 defense and it has no attack points, and in using its effect you can then get a decent strong enough earth monster for an offensive version. So in using its effect you've got this as a defense version and you've got an offense version as well to combine the 2 strategies. Ultimate Flag Mech Tough Striker is a light attribute machine type normal monster. It's a level 7 with 2500 attack and 1600 defense. This is quite decent considering that it's a level 7 monster, and this tends to be the cap for these monsters at 2500 attack points. Gadget Soldier is a fire machine type level 6 with 1800 attack and 2000 defense. It's a substandard level 6 monster that came from the original series of Yu-Gi-Oh! It was used by Seto Kaiba within his deck. Whether he actually summoned it is questionable. Ultimate Flag Beast Cannon Rhino is a light attribute machine type level 5 with 1600 attack and 200 defense. The requirement is to send one light attribute machine type monster from your hand to the graveyard, and the effect is to choose one face up light attribute machine type monster on your field. If it attacks a defense position monster this turn, inflicts piercing battle damage. Then if you have a face up machine type normal monster on your field, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. This gives one of your light attribute machine types the piercing battle damage effect, and then you can also do an additional 500 points of burn damage. It's fine, it's okay, and the discard cost isn't too much. The only concern is that since it has to be a light attribute machine type, you have to run a very specific deck to support this effect. Elephant is an earth attribute machine type normal monster. It's a level 5 with 1700 attack and 500 defense. This is okay for a level 5 monster for the time being, but it's easily forgettable. Ultimate Flag Beast Avenwolf is a light attribute machine type level 4 with 1500 attack and 200 defense. This is the baseline for most level 4 monsters at 1500, and so this is the machine equivalent. Joint Tech Ace is an earth attribute machine type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack and 0 defense. This again is a baseline for most machine type monsters at the level 4 level with 1500 attack points. It's fine for the time being. It will be eventually power creeped. Aqua Sorcerer is a water attribute spellcaster type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack and 0 defense. This is the spellcaster equivalent for the highest level 4 monsters. Fire Sorcerer is a fire attribute spellcaster type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack and 0 defense. This is the fire attribute equivalent to Aqua Sorcerer. Light Sorcerer is a light attribute spellcaster type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack and 0 defense. This is the same as the other sorcerers, it's just a light attribute version. Surge Bolt Lizard is a light attribute thunder type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack and 0 defense. This is the equivalent of the 1500 monsters, and this is supporting the thunder type. Cyber Soldier of Dark World is a dark attribute machine type level 4 with 1400 attack and 1200 defense. This is around the baseline of most level 4 monsters and has been introduced from the original series of Yu-Gi-Oh! Shining Employee Brand New is a light attribute machine type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1400 attack and 600 defense. This is the baseline of level 4 monsters, and this is about the same for the machine types. Bull Breaker is an earth attribute machine type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1200 attack and 800 defense. This is getting to the weaker side of the machine type monsters. Lightning Braver is a light attribute thunder type level 3 with 1200 attack and 700 defense. The requirement is to shuffle 3 monsters from your graveyard into the deck. The effect is to change one face down defense position monster on your opponent's field, face up defense position. Then you can make all face up monsters on your opponent's field lose 800 defense points until the end of this turn. This is quite useful because anything with 1900 or less defense points is subject to this card running those monsters over. It is subsequently based on choosing a monster your opponent has, which is face down, and it relies on your opponent's other monsters to be face up to really apply these effects. So it's very situational. There are a couple of cards that can help with this. Mainly I'm thinking Light of Intervention, which is a trap card, which prevents any monsters from being set face down. The requirement itself, shuffling 3 monsters, is a standard requirement for a lot of monsters. It's nothing different or difficult to achieve. Assault Armato is a light attribute machine type level 3 with 1200 attack and 600 defense. The requirement, if you have 3 face-up machine type monsters on your field, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. The effect is to choose one face-up monster on your opponent's field. It loses 300 attack and defense until the end of this turn. The requirement of this is potentially quite difficult. You do have to have 3 face-up machine types on the field, can be yours and your opponent's, but most likely to have control of this effect, you're going to have all 3 on your side. You only have to then send the top card of the deck to the graveyard. That's not difficult within the requirements, and one of your face-up opponent's monsters loses 300 attack and defense. Their minimal stat declines, which means unless you're running decent support, it's not going to be that much difference. Craft Drone is an earth attribute machine type level 3 with 1000 attack and 0 defense. The requirement is to send one machine type monster from your hand to the graveyard, and the effect is to draw 1 card. You're just replacing one monster in your hand for an additional draw. Depending on how that quality of the draw is, can be either better or or worse. It's also important to note that any monsters that are sent to the graveyard, if they've got a graveyard based effect, this can be additional advantage. Click Terror is a wind attribute machine type normal monster, level 3 with 1300 attack and 1000 defense. This is kind of like the borderline maximum attack points for a level 3 monster. Ultimate Flag Beast Aim Eagle is a light attribute machine type level 2 with 200 attack and defense. The requirement: if your opponent has a face up level 7 or higher monster on their field, send 2 face up light attribute monsters from your field to the graveyard. The effect is to special summon 1 machine type monster from your hand face up on your field. It gains 1000 attack until the end phase. The requirement on this card needs your opponent to have a high level monster, and you have to get rid of 2 face up light attribute monsters that you have on the field to the graveyard. The effect is to then special summon a machine monster from your hand. It does gain an additional 1000 attack points, so that can be quite decent. If you end up summoning such as Machine King or Perfect Machine King, this can be over 3000 attack points. But is it worth all these conditions to meet? I personally don't agree with it. Tamabot is an Earth Attribute Machine type normal monster. It's a level 1 with 200 attack and 0 defense. This is more the range of what level 1 monsters tend to be, and unless it's going to be used as part of a fusion somewhere in the future, I can't see why people would consider running this card. Pierce is a normal spell card with no requirements. The effect is to choose 1 face-up monster on your field. If it attacks a defense position monster this turn, inflict piercing battle damage. If the attack of the attacking monster exceeds the defense of the attack target, inflict the difference. This is just a piercing effect similar to things such as Fairy Meteor Crush, but it's a one-off, once per turn effect. Iron Onslaught is a normal spell card with a requirement: you have a face-up machine type monster on your field. The effect is to destroy a spell or trap card on your opponent's field. This is a machine version of Mystical Space Typhoon. So long as you've got machine type, you can activate it, but it has to be run almost purely in that style of deck. Stop Defense is a normal spell card with the requirement and the effect: select 1 defense position monster on your opponent's side of the field and change it to attack position. This is useful if your opponent's monsters happen to have high defense and low attack, and it's a way of clearing those monsters from the board. Strong Zed is a normal spell card with no requirements. The effect is to gain life points equal to the level of 1 face-up normal monster on your field times 100. Given the normal monsters that are currently in the game, I think the most you're going to get is from something like Blue Eyes White Dragon, so that's an extra 800 life points. It's not bad, but it really doesn't do much when life point generating cards already exist. Tribute Lock is a normal trap card with the requirement: when your opponent normal summons a level 5 or higher monster while your life points are lower than your opponent's, the effect is to change that monster to face up defense position. So the purpose of this is just to stop your opponent from attacking with that monster for the duration of that turn. It does come at a few conditions. The opponent has to normal summon a monster. It has to be level 5 or higher, so if your opponent special summons, it bypasses this effect, and your life points have to be lower than your opponent's, and it only works on that one monster. Had it been able to work on any monsters summoned during the turn, I would argue that I was slightly better. Beast Gear Secret Art Primal Fist is a normal trap card with the requirement: when an opponent's monster declares an attack targeting your face-up level 7 to 9 Beast Warrior, Fiend or Machine type monsters, the effect is to change the attacking monster to face-up defense position. Then if you changed a Dragon, Spellcaster or Fairy type monster to defense position by this effect, destroy 1 spell or trap card on your opponent's field. This is a very niche style of card. For example, the requirements can only be worked on level 7 to level 9 monsters. They have to be Beast Warrior, Fiend or Machines, so you're eliminating a whole load of decks. It changes the attacking monster's defense position, so it's a bit like a kind of gravity bind type of effect. It changes that, but you get the bonus of destroying one of your opponent's spell or trap cards if you happen to have a Dragon, Spellcaster or Fairy type somewhere on the field. It's not a good effect. It's just too reliant and too complicated unless you are really that keen to try and stop that particular attack. I'd advise, at the moment, I think there are cards that support this strategy without being this specific to any one type. Join Tech Bumper is a normal trap card with the requirement: when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, shuffle 3 machine type normal monsters from your graveyard into the deck. The effect is to destroy up to 3 attack position monsters on your opponent's field. This is an okay effect. It's a bit like having a Mirror Force. It just recovers your machine type monsters as well from your graveyard. Guard. It can wipe out your opponent's entire field, but is limited by the fact that if your opponent doesn't have anything in attack mode, maybe they've put the other two monsters in defense mode, then it'll only wipe out one card, so you're not getting the maximum value. The other thing is that there are certain cards that are immune to trap effects or destruction based effects, which are coming into the game. A lot of the maximum monsters meet that criteria, and so can actually dodge this style of effect. Mystery Handcuffs is a normal trap card with the requirement when your opponent normal summons a monster, the effect is to choose one face-up monster on your opponent's field. This turn, while that monster is face-up, your opponent cannot tribute it for a tribute summon. This is a decent way of locking your opponent out whilst keeping their zones full of perhaps weaker monsters. The only concern of that is at some point you're going to have to get rid of that monster so that you can attack directly. Otherwise your opponent is just simply going to leave that monster and build up the resources before they can get rid of that specific card themselves. Battle's Emotion is a normal trap card with the requirement when an opponent's monster declares an attack on your face-up machine type monster, pay 600 life points. The effect is to change one attack possession monster on your opponent's field face-up defense position. This is decent as a way of blocking your opponent's attacks, even though it does come at the price of 600 life points. So that's all of the second structure deck that's been covered as well. What do you guys think of the cards that were featured? Personally for me, I think they're a bit less effective than the first characters, but that's just my opinion. Whatever you think, I'd love to hear those in the comments down below, and make sure to watch the video in the end screen. It's going to show you more information about cards related to Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duels.